Good morning, everyone. We will be starting the webinar at 9:05. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to PSPA Practical Training Awareness Webinar. My name is Masimba Makunike. I'm the ICAS Assistant Technical Manager. So today, as you all know, as part of your training, beyond your academic requirements, you're also required to have completed your practical training. So today, we will be having more of an awareness for the whole practical training process. So as part of this webinar, we will also have Mr. Mbika, who is the General Manager from PSC. He will also then share in terms of PSC's expectations as well as support towards your practical training. Then we will also discuss in terms of the ICAS public sector competence framework summary. I think we all have different questions in terms of what competence am I required to complete and how do I complete those competence. So as part of this webinar, we will also cover that. Then as part of this webinar also covers your expectations and responsibility throughout the training process from the registration as a student up until you then finish the whole practical training. Then we also cover the overview of the process for registering a training contract under the ICAS practical training framework. Then we also cover the process of registering accrediting a training office. I think we all know that some of you are not yet attached to an accredited training office. So as part of this webinar, we will also cover that. Just housekeeping issues. If you have any questions, feel free to utilize the Q&A chat box as the presenters will be presenting. If you have any question, just feel free to post your question on the Q&A session. As part of this webinar, we will have about 20 minutes where we will then be able to then answer all the questions. So today we have four presenters. The first presenter will be Mr. Mbika, who is the General Manager for PSC. Then we also have Alice Mkunyaze, who is the Orchard Business School Managing Director, who will cover the summary of the ICAS Public Sector Competence Framework. Then we also have the ICAS Registrar, who is Felicity Karekwayo-Nane, who will be covering the training expectations and responsibility throughout the training process, from registration to assessment and progression through the level. Then we also have Benengo Masha, who is the ICAS Students Coordinator, who will then cover the overview of the process for registering a training contract under the ICAS practical training framework. Then we also cover the process of registering accredited training office. So at this point in time, I think I will wait for Mr. Mbika to join us. So as for now, I will also maybe allow ICAS Technical Manager Tondelai Mabambe to just have to just 2 minutes whilst we are just waiting for Mr. Mbika. Just have something to say to you. Just 2 minutes. Over to you, Tondelai.
Okay, thank you, Masimba. Hope you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thanks, Masimba, for that wonderful introduction to this topic, I think, which was long overdue. Like what you have mentioned, it's actually critical that a student who is studying with ICAS should ideally achieve both the practical and the theoretical requirements of ICAS. Also, sorry, Masimba, I see, before I maybe eat into my time, I see there's a hand. Maybe you can just address that before I go further.
All right, thank you. Chimunapo, I've unmuted you. You can unmute and speak if you have a question. All right, Chandra, I think you can go ahead. I guess it was a hand that was raised by mistake.
Yeah, so thanks, Masimba. Maybe it was an old hand. But like what you were saying, we want to emphasize the importance of practical training for one to complete years or year studies. Obviously, it is culminating from the MOU between Public Service Commission and ICAS, which is sort of a partnership between the two bodies to capacitate finance professionals in the public sector. So it's critical that you achieve your practical requirements, because when you complete the exams, you can't be a member without the practical requirements that have been mentioned by Masimba. So thank you, Masimba, for this session. I hope and trust Felicity again from Registrar is going to do justice to cover the requirements. But what I want just to urge the students is to take note of the session and also ask questions if necessary. We do have people who are equally competent to deal with that. So maybe from the analysis, from the data that we have, you'd see that the majority of people here are not yet registered. They've not yet registered their training contracts, despite some of them achieving, passing all the exams for level 1, level 2. But, it's actually disappointing that you can't be a member before you achieve the practical requirements of ICAS. So I think it's a very important session whereby we need to adjust and make sure that each and every student that have enrolled with ICAS should ideally complete training hours as per the requirements. So Masimba, I don't think I have much to say, but just to emphasize the importance of the practical training on side of the trainees, so that when you complete your exams, you gain membership. It might be technician, which is a prerequisite, regardless of your passes at the theoretical side. One should essentially achieve the practical requirements. And the first step, like what Masimba was saying, is to get a training office. And this has already been covered with previous discussions with the Public Service Commission, whereby we agreed in principle that regardless of, of the training office being, few, I know we have plus or minus 5, Masimba, right? So we definitely allocate each and every student to a training office being supervised by equally competent assessors. Obviously, we're going to be using the already qualified members within the Public Service Commission. And I'm sure I've seen some of the letters which have been communicated to the assessors so that this requirement is fulfilled, and we will not have some disappointments when one completes his or her theoretical requirements. So Masimba, thanks. I think those were a few words over to you. I don't know if Mr. Mbika is joined now.
Thank you, Tunderai, for the few words to the students. I think we're still waiting for Mr. Mbika to join. So at this point in time, allow me to introduce our first speaker to you, who is Ellis Mkunyaze, who is going to cover a summary of the public sector competence framework. Ellis Mkunyaze, over to you.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Masimba. Please confirm if you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, right. Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me to this session. Just to cover an overview of the ICA's practical training competency framework. So just to, I'm sure maybe it's already been mentioned that ICA's training program has got two pillars. There is the professional education pillar, which the students are doing in class and writing exams. But there's also the practical training pillar, which is the focus of this webinar. So I'm just going to cover just going to share my slides and cover the key principles. Please confirm if you can see my slides.
Yes, I can see the slides.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, right. So let me get right into it. How much time do I have? Sorry, Masiba, it's 21 past. How much time do I have so that at least I can check my presentation?
You have at least 40 minutes.
40 minutes. So I've got up until 11. Okay, no, that's fine. All right. So just to get started, the practical training for the PSPA qualification has got 7 skills areas. We call them skills areas. So it's split into 7. The first one, which you can see at the block at the top, we call them pervasive skills. And on pervasive skills, they are split into 4 sub competence areas, which is your professional conduct, your management and leadership, your professional attributes, and information technology. So that's what makes up pervasive skills. I'll still get into detail a little bit more. The second is accounting and external reporting. And then the third one is financial management. The fourth one is audit and assurance. The fifth one is risk management and governance. And then we've got taxation. And last but not least, we've got management, decision making, and control. So that's essentially the 7 areas that we have on the ICA's competency framework. So what I just want to cover now is then when you look at the 7, what does that mean for the students? So I'll start with the first ones we have, and I'll just be going back and forth on the slide. So in terms of the skills, they're split into 3 categories. We've got what we call compulsory skills, which is the blue here, and we've got elective skills, and then we also then have got the residual skills, right? So the compulsory skills are accounting and external reporting and pervasive skills. So if I go back to the slide, what you'll see is that the ones that I have in blue out of the 7 are pervasive skills, and accounting and external reporting are what we call compulsory skills. Now, as trainees, you're training in different environments. Some are training in, some are in internal audit, some are in from the Auditor General, some are in accounting and finance. People are doing different things. So compulsory skills is, regardless of where you have trained, we expect you to be exposed to the skills relating to pervasive and accounting and external reporting. So these are compulsory for everyone, right? Regardless of the training environment in which you are training in. So that's number 1, which is the pervasive, which is the compulsory skills, accounting and external reporting, as well as pervasive professional skills. Then the second one is what we call elective skills. So ICA's training regulations require that a trainee must have at least one elective, There is no, some people can do more than one, but it's personally, I discourage from having one. I think if the regulations say at least have one, just have one. So what it means is, remember, we've got the 2, which is pervasive skills and accounting and accounting and external reporting, which you say these are compulsory. So on the remaining ones, which is the 5, you then, the training office then selects on behalf of the trainee which one is going to be the elective. And let me emphasize, it's not the trainee who decides. It's the training office that decides on behalf of the trainee when they get them on the training program, because each training office is accredited for an elective skill. Each training office is accredited for an elective skill. So for example, if you go to the Auditor General, they're accredited for the audit and assurance, which means automatically for trainees in the audit office, audit and assurance become the elective. If you go for guys that are in government, maybe you're working in internal audit, automatically that training office has to be accredited for the elective of risk management and governance. So in that case, if you're in internal audit, risk management and governance becomes your elective. If you're at ZIMRA, for example, your elective becomes taxation, okay? And if you're working, let's say in Ministry of Finance or the other ministries, you're in the finance department, you then choose between either financial management or management decision-making and what? And control. So these are at least one of the 5 has to be elective. So what that means is we've got 2 compulsory plus 1 elective. I then move on to the last one, which is the residual skills. So if you have your compulsory and then you have chosen 1 elective, the remaining 4 become residual skills, right? So if let's say in this case, we are saying that you're doing audit and assurance as your elective, it means financial management, risk management and governance, taxation and management, decision making and control become your residual skills, right? So that's how, in terms from the skills area, that's how the training model is set out. So why is it necessary to have this different classification? Again, according to the training regulations, the compulsory skills and at least one of the electives and the elective skills that you have, the expectation is that you must get what we call advanced experience in a complex context. So what that means is for your compulsory skills and your elective, we expect to have advanced experience. So you see that the competences for advanced are really advanced competences, because, for example, if you are in internal audit, you're doing internal audit on a daily basis. So we expect you to get advanced experience. Then on the remaining residual skills, what we expect, or what ICAS expects, is therefore basic experience in a simple context. So just to emphasize here, although your elective is audit and assurance, we still expect some basic exposure in the remaining 4. You obviously can't be a public sector professional accountant who is sort of clueless on tax because you trained in an audit office, or clueless on financial management or risk management. So ICAS still expects you to be exposed to the remaining 4, but not at the same level as you've been exposed to the compulsory skills and the elective skills, right? So that's sort of how this training model is structured. So just to give, hopefully just to try and still explain the same point here, compulsory skills is saying it's accounting and external reporting, as well as pervasive skills. Then on the elective skills, you then choose either of the 5 remaining ones, and then the balance become residual skills. And we're saying advanced experience, like for your compulsory skills and your elective skills, you must obtain sufficient experience to apply the concepts and techniques in complex situations and environments. Now, please take note that we've got assessors that have been adequately trained, who already know in detail what, because the assessor is the one who makes who is going to, and the training officer is the one who makes a decision around the experience that they're giving you. So they already know what is advanced, because I think we've dealt with them when we did their training. So they already are aware. Whereas for residual skills, we're looking at uncomplicated situations or simple environments. That's for residual. That's for the basic experience in residual skills. So I want to show, now what I want to do is I want to show, just to run through the detailed screen now that you understand the difference. I'm just going to run through. I'm sure ICAS is going to share with you this information in terms of the competency framework before I move on. So I'm going to stop. I'm going to just exit mine and then go to Word. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, all right. Right. Okay, that's fine. At least right. So this is the full document of the ICA's training requirements. I'm sure it contains everything that I'm covering in much more detail, so you'll be able to understand. But including everything that's covered, I'm sure ICA's probably has given you, or if you have not been given, hopefully you get this after this meeting. But where I want to scroll, it's a long document, it's 60 pages, which details the training program for the PSPA, including what I was just covering here. But what I want to cover now are the detailed competences. I'll not be able to cover through them because they're quite a lot. There's a lot of competences. But when you get this document, just to show you how it sort of looks like, you have got, we start with compulsory skills here. And then under compulsory skills, you say you need accounting and external reporting. So under external reporting, what you then have here are the competences, right? So ICAS then is very prescriptive on the competences that they expect you to have. And I'll just run through a couple of examples here. So for example, AEC.1, it says evaluates appropriate accounting frameworks. And the next one says evaluates accounts for entities transactions, including non-routine transactions, right? So these are the competences. But then ICAS has further gone in and said on each competences, they've also prescribed the tasks that the trainee must do in order to achieve the competence which is required. Okay, so let me repeat this. You start off with compulsory skills, and under compulsory skills, we've got accounting and external reporting, which is the first skill, which you said is a compulsory skill. And then under that skill, you then have got a list of competences which are expected to have. And under each competences are prescribed tasks that you must do in order for you to achieve those competences. On some competences, maybe 2 tasks. On some competences, there could be more tasks. So it says here, based on the entity's financial reporting needs and stakeholder identifies, evaluates the appropriateness of the accounting framework. So this is what you might actually do on the job, to evaluate the appropriateness of the accounting framework, which could be IFRS, IPSAS, cash basis, whatever framework that is there. This one says evaluates or accounts for routine transactions, for example, revenue, cost of sales. So which means you must be able to demonstrate that you have accounted for on the job, which means, let's say you've posted or you've processed transactions, which are routine transactions. That is the task that you're expected to do here. So it goes on. I'll still come back to the color coding. And then we've got what we call professional. Remember, the second one was pervasive skills, and we said under pervasive skills, there are quite a number. The first one is professional conduct. It's the same thing. We've got competences here, and we've got tasks here. And then these are the tasks that you must be able to do. Let me just see whether I can just look at one example. Let's look at management and leadership, which is easy. The competence is demonstrates an ability to manage and lead. And here it says on the task, manages and supervise others effectively. So the evidence that you need to bring is, did you manage and supervise others? This one says, effectively participates in meetings. The evidence is, I participated in a meeting, leads effective meetings, here you are chairing. So these are the tasks that you must accomplish and be assessed on. I've got personal attributes, then information technology, right? And then so that's on the pervasive skills. Then we get into elective skills. Okay, we get into elective skills. Remember, I said out of the remaining 5, you then choose one as your elective. So under elective skills, we've got audit and assurance. It's still the same structure, competences and tasks. Right, then you move down. Financial management, still the same, competences and tasks. Management decision making and control. I'm just gonna maybe just use this one as an example. Right, here it says under management decision making, prepares budgets and performs sensitivity analysis. That is the competence. What are some of the tasks that you're expected to do? Prepares a budget for an entity or an organizational unit with clearly documented assumptions. Performs sensitivity analysis on prepared budgets, varying key assumptions to document range of possible outcomes. Right, so that's sort of the task that you then do to meet this particular competence. Right, I'm just picking a few here. Then we've got taxation. Remember, I'm still doing elective skills here, and you only choose one. And risk management and governance, right, which is more internal audit. And then we then go to the third one, which is the residual skills. So what it means is, let's say my elective skills was financial management, which means in this case, I'm not going to pick this audit and assurance as their residual, because like I said, you need the remainder become residual. So you then come to the residual skills here, and then you now need to make sure you do all these tasks under residual skills for all the remaining. So as you can see, the document is long. What you're expected to do is a lot in terms of what you're assessed on. So it is important that you familiarize yourself with this and you plan and make sure that you don't get to the end and then you realize that there are certain competences that you don't have. Right, so let me come to the color coding now. So for the PSPA program, you're on a 3-year contract, which is split into 1 year, 1 year, because we've got 3 different levels. But the competencies I just covered are for the 3 years, right? So the yellow, all the competencies which are in yellow are competencies that must be achieved by a trainee in their first year for them to obtain the accounting technician. So what it means is if you pass your level 1 examinations, you're fine. And then you need to go and make sure that you've been assessed on all the yellow. That way you are able to get sign off and get your membership as an accounting technician, and then you've completed this level. The green is for level 2, and then the blue is for level 3. So what it's saying, Masimba, can you still hear me? Something happened from my end.
Yes, I can still
okay.
hear you.
Okay, that's fine. That's all right. Thank you. Right. So I was saying that, so when you go back to the color coding, so we say the yellow is, for level 1, green for level 2, and blue for level 3. So what it means is when I'm coming here, I use AC1, which is evaluating accounting frameworks and policies here. This is a level 3 sort of like competence, okay? Because it's in blue. But when you're in level 1, what are you expected to do? Evaluates and accounts for routine transactions, which means the expectation in the training program is that you must be able to account for routine transactions, which means your revenue, cost of sales, operating expenses, your day-to-day. And then you must also be able, this one says prepares and evaluates reconciliations. You must also be able to do reconciliations. So at level 2, you must be able to do reconciliations. That's all you're expected to do for level 1. You can account for routine transactions and you can do reconciliations. When you get to level 2, the additional competence you must have is that you must also be able to account for non-routine transactions, which include accounting estimates, where there is judgment, disposal of assets, discontinued operations, deferred tax, and the likes. That's level 2. Then level 3 is now everything else, where we are now talking about evaluating the appropriateness of the framework, accounting policies. You're talking about evaluates non-financial information, which includes directors' reports, sustainability reports, and the likes. That becomes level 3 sort of stuff. So that's sort of like how this is structured. So when you go through the year, you then find like for all this, everything that is in yellow, you must be able to do it in level 1, in green by level 2, and then blue by level 3. So that's sort of like how the competences are sort of structured. Now let me go back to my slide. Let me go back to my slide. Okay, right. So professional conduct values are very important to ICAs because they form the foundation. They form the foundation on which trainees function, right? Because no matter how brilliant you are, if you don't have these fundamental values, you're not fit to be a PSPA member. So the foundation on which the program is built is that we expect trainees to have good professional conduct values. This is included in the ICAS code, and they're based, some of you have done the CPC code, and it's based on the CPC. So in terms of fundamental principles, we are looking at integrity, objectivity, professional competence and UK, confidentiality, and professional behavior. And I'm sure some of you are very familiar with these from your studies, right? So integrity, objectivity, professional competence, and UK are very key. Now, the way we assess these, and I'll cover that when I get to the way you're going to be assessed, it's going to be very different because unlike other competences, unlike other competences, we expect you to get those things as you go. But these things we expect you to have at any stage in the training contract. So for example, if it's about accounting for routine and non-routine transactions, if a trainee is coming and you're in your first year, the expectation is maybe you actually don't know how to do it. And the idea is that during the training contract, we're going to train you on how to do it. So that's how you're going to be assessed. But integrity is expected from day one, right? Because if someone lies to you in the interview room, they are not fit even to be employed. So we expect you to demonstrate these at the beginning, during, at the end, and even when you're a member. You must always be able to demonstrate this fundamental principle. So they're very important to expect. Trainees are expected. Trainees are expected to act with integrity, with objectivity, and the likes. So that's the important thing in terms of these ones, the professional conduct values. Then basic versus advanced. I think I've covered it. And I said it's important when you do tasks, you should know that if you're doing a basic task for accounting, and I just want to emphasize this, remember we said accounting and external reporting, you require, it's a compulsory skill, rather, and you require advanced experience, okay? Now, if you do a basic task, it's not going to help you. So if you're doing tasks that are basic in your compulsory and elective, it's not going to help your training. So you must be intentional that I'm doing tasks that are advanced because those are the ones that advance my training, right? So that's very important upfront. So the training policy at each training institution should already clearly say what task must you do in order to achieve these particular competences. Then on advanced, if I've spoken about that I've spoken that you need for the residuals, for example, you need basic experience on residuals. So there is no you shouldn't spend time trying to do advanced things where you're requiring basic. Let's say I hope you guys will get this. Your elective is financial management. So you need residual skills in tax. There is no point in doing advanced tasks in tax because that's not what's required. What's required are basics. So do the basics and finish the basics, get signed off on those basics. Then if you then do advanced, it's bonus, but you've made sure that you're already signed off on your basic tasks. This is just to make sure that you are your program, you're not jeopardizing your program and risk of not getting signed off. So now let's get to assessment. Let me get to assessment. So what is assessment? So assessment is the process of gathering evidence to determine the competence of a trainee against a set of predetermined outcomes. So what I've covered so far is I've told you guys the competences that you're expected to have and the tasks that must you do, which means when you've done work, you must now be assessed on whether you've got those competences. And they're saying assessment is now the process of gathering evidence. Now, what you'll see that the ICAS process is it works. Assessment is based on evidence, right? So evidence becomes very important as a way of assessing your competences. It has to be based on evidence. So when you assess, we look at the evidence and we assess the evidence, and then we make conclusions about your ability, right? So there are 3 phases in the assessment process for the ICAS training model. The first one is what we call RPL, recognition of prior learning. The second one is what we call formative. And the third one is what we call summative, okay? Right, in terms of recognition of prior learning, this is the expectation, and this is very important, guys, especially for you. When you start the training program, you've got 2 types of trainees. You've got a trainee who is coming from school. They've never worked in their life, which means when they're coming, the assumption is that they've not been exposed to any of the competences that are required by ICAS, okay? They're straight from school. They've not worked before. They've never done a reconciliation. They've never done a set of financial statements. They've never accounted for routine or non-routine transactions. They've never performed an audit. That trainee, we start them at 0. So there is no need to do anything. But I'm sure the majority of you here, you're coming into training when you've been working before, which means the ICAS training model is saying, do reconciliation statements. But you're saying, I've been doing reconciliations for the past 5 years, so I already know how to do reconciliations. So the process of capturing the experience you have before you come into the ICAS training program is done through the process of recognition of prior learning. So starting point, and this is very important, before, one thing that you must do as soon as you guys have signed your ICAS training contracts, which I'm hoping it's soon, please complete recognition of prior learning, where you document competencies that you already have as you start your training program. Because you're saying, I've been doing this work before, because remember, some of you were onboarding you when already you've got years of experience. There's certain things that you're going to see in those competencies which you've already done, which you already know what to do. So you then document them on your recognition of prior learning. You take them to your assessor, and then the assessor is then going to sign off and say, I'm happy on this competence, I'm happy on this competence, particularly if that, it's even easier and better if the assessor is someone that you've worked with before because they already know your capabilities. So the starting point is you complete your form, your recognition of prior learning, and then you use that, and then already you are being giving credit. Remember, you saw that there are a lot of competences on that program, so you might not even need to do anything because some of them you've already done. So you get your recognition of prior learning. From there, we then talk about what we call formative assessments. Formative assessment happens during the training program, right? And is done by the reviewer. And I'll talk about the different roles. I think for now, just say, I'll just leave it and say it's going to be completed by the reviewer. And there are forms that we use, which we call the TSR and the PSR. TSR means technical skills review, and PSR means professional skills review. So what it means is if you do, let's say you do your monthly report, month-end report. What do you do with that month-end? After you've completed the report, you document the competences that you have used in doing that report. So for example, in that report, you're already taking certain competences, right? So you did analysis of budget and actual, you commented on variances, and this is some of the things that you expected to do. So you then document, this is what I did on the TSR. And then you give it to your reviewer, and then the reviewer reviews it, and then that becomes the evidence that is there. So after the completion of each task or each job, you're completing your TSRs. PSR relates to professional skills. It's talking to those pervasive skills that I spoke about. They've got the form called the PSR, and then the TSR is the other form. So that's your formative skills. Now, the summative skills is then done at the end of each 6-month cycle. So what then happens is that the assessor is now looking at all the TSRs you completed during the 6-month process, and then they do an assessment on your ability at that particular point. And we use a form called assessment needs analysis, right? These forms, I think they're available through ICAS, and I'm not sure, maybe Masiba will also talk about the system that they're also using for this particular process. But that's sort of like the 3 stages of assessment. So what it means is, if you're in your first year, you're doing your first year, you must have 2 ANAs, assessment needs analysis. The first one done in the first 6 months, and the second one done in the final 6 months. And then in the final 6 months, the assessor must therefore say you're competent, okay? And then they're able to sign you off. If they're not able to sign you off, you'll have then to do another 6 months, and then you're probably going to be signed off when you're already in your second year, right? So every 6 months, this process where the assessor then assesses your competences based on the information you've provided through the TSRs and the PSRs, okay? Right, so what are the different stakeholders in our assessment process? There is the trainee, obviously you. Then we've got the reviewer. The reviewer is very important and plays a very important role, because remember I spoke about the TSR and the PSR being completed by the reviewer. Normally the reviewer is the consumer of the work you performed. So let's say, for example, you are an accountant and you report to the chief accountant. So you do your report and you submit it to the chief accountant. The chief accountant automatically becomes the reviewer, because then when you say these are the competencies I've gotten, they're in a better place to do that assessment, because they are the ones that saw the work you did. They're able to judge whether you were able to do it or you were not able to do it, right? So the reviewer. Please note, the reviewer does not need to be an assessor, but they obviously needs to be. When you do training, it's important that they're also trained on this program, so that they are quite aware in terms of what it is that they're training for. Then we've got what we call the evaluator. The evaluator is just, normally the assessors can be very busy people. The evaluator is someone who assists the assessor, but where the assessor, let's say, has got 2-3 trainees, there is no need for an evaluator. But because ICAS allows up to a maximum of, I think, about 15 trainees under each assessor, and that way can become very onerous. So ICAS then, so the assessor can then have evaluators who can assist them, particularly on the ANA when they're doing the assessment needs analysis. Then you've got advisors, someone who's just advising the training office, a moderator and verifier, very important people, particularly in dealing with disputes and just making sure that the process is improving. But the key roles that I've spoken is the trainee, reviewer, evaluator, and assessor. Those are like the very important roles that must be there in every training office. So for evidence that you're going to submit, just looking at the characteristic of evidence that you are expected to submit, number 1, the evidence should be positive. This I always say to trainees. The evidence that you submit must be what? Number 1, it must be positive, which means it must be what you did, not what you didn't do. I'll give you an example. If you're going to say I've got integrity because I didn't steal money, that's not positive, because you're not talking about what you did. The fact that you didn't steal money does not mean, is not evidence enough for integrity. So it must be what you did, okay? So it must be, I picked money in the corridor, and then I went and looked for the owner and I gave them back the money, as maybe as a demonstration of integrity, something like that. Then it must also be specific, which means it must not be vague, or it must not be general. What that means is that when you're talking about specific, because it's evidence-based, right? You must tell us what you actually did, when you actually did, and for who. So, for example, instead of saying there is a competence that we're looking at on IT skills, which means ability to use the internet as a source of research. Someone could say, I use the internet every day in researching in my work. That's not even specific. That is too vague. You could shape it like this. When I was doing my payee return, I went onto the Zimra website and downloaded the text tables and used it for my March payee return. Now it becomes more specific. It's no longer vague. So that's sort of like how you document. Number 3, it must be verifiable. So if I need to verify it, it must be verifiable. That's why all our evidence is limited to workplace activities, not personal activities. So you could have demonstrated good integrity at church, but because church is not part of our work context, it becomes difficult for us to verify that. So it must be verifiable. It doesn't mean that the reviewer has to verify everything, but if a reviewer needs to verify, they must be able to do it. So these are the 3 characteristics of evidence that's submitted by the trainee. It must be positive, it must be specific, and it must be very verifiable. Then what are the different methods of assessments that are going to be used? Number 1 is on the job review. This is where you do a report, you do financial statements, you do a reconciliation, and someone reviews it, which is going to be the most common way of doing the job. The second one is observation, where the reviewer observes you doing something. So I'll give you an example. There was a competence that says leads effective meetings or participates in meetings. One of the ways of doing that is the reviewer, you could be sitting in the same meeting with the reviewer and they're seeing you doing a presentation. So that becomes like by observation. And then lastly, by questioning, although we don't encourage this, but in some instances, it might end up where the reviewer needs to question you on a particular matter. And then that becomes the method of assessment. You'd find that it's also possible. I'm talking here, moving on to talk about simulations. I'm just cognizant of time. It's also possible that the training office may not be able to give you exposure to all of the tasks, okay? To all the tasks. One of the ones that I always find very tricky is, for example, the one that says the task that requires you to do payee returns, okay? So if you're going to do that task, it means you need to go to the HR and have access to the payroll and do payee returns, which is highly confidential. So the training office might say this particular task, we are not able to give you exposure to it. So what can they do? They can simulate that task. So the training office, the ICAS training regulations allows the use of simulations. And how can we do that simulation? Let's say for a payee return, we can just give you fictitious data and ask you to do a Zimra return, which means you then use the fictitious data of salaries and benefits, you calculate your payee, you then populate a return, and then you submit to your reviewer as if you're submitting to Zimra, something like that. So that's sort of like simulations. They need to mirror real life as much as possible. And they must be assessed in the normal way we assess trainees in the different contexts. So when you've done a simulation, you must therefore still go back and complete your TSR or your PSR, which is then filtering through to the ANA. Please note, ICAS does not accept things like e-learning, quizzes and tests, or academic studies as simulations. The simulation has to be done to mirror a work situation. So we can't ask you, for example, quizzes and tests where we say, what date are you required to submit your payee return? And then you write an answer. That's not a simulation. That's like a quiz. What we are saying is do as if you're actually doing the work. So simulations are allowed. Then I want to finish off by conducting assessment. So how is the assessment conducted? Okay, I must have a slide that's missing here. But anyway, ICAS uses, so I'm going to have to do some intervention here. Let's see. Right. Yes, this is the part that I was looking for. So ICAS uses a 4-level rating scale to assess trainees. So let me put it into context. You've done a reconciliation. You submitted to your supervisor after you finish doing the work. And then the supervisor looks and reviews the work. That's fine. Work is done. Then what do? You go in and complete a TSR form where you're capturing the evidence that I've completed a reconciliation, right? So one of the things that you must do on the TSR form is then to rate your ability to complete the task. Okay. You need to do a self-rating of your ability to complete the task. Level 1 being you are not capable of performing. So normally level 1 is you did the reconciliation, but you couldn't finish it. And the reviewer ended up saying, just leave it, I'll do it myself. So when you do your TSR, that is typically level 1. Okay. Level 2 says capable with frequent supervision or intervention. This is where you were doing the recon, but you were getting stuck. So you ended up going back to your review and asking, how do I do this? How do I do that? Particularly, maybe you're doing it for the first time or for the second time. You haven't had much exposure. So there is frequent supervision or intervention to help you complete the task. But you're still able to complete the task, but with frequent intervention. We rate you level 2. Then level 3 is you were capable with limited or periodic supervision. So level 3 is you were able to do it maybe with 1 or 2 interventions. It wasn't much. Then finally, level 4 is you're able to do it on your own without any interventions. So every task that you're going to do and raise on the PSR, you must rate it yourself. Please note, this is not rating performance. It's rating ability, okay? So the expectation is when you're coming to training for the first time and you've never done financial statements, you obviously cannot be expected to already be at level 4. You're going to start off maybe at level 2, and then as you do more management accounts every month, you go to level 3, and eventually when you finish your training, you must be level 4 on all the tasks that are listed on that sheet. You must be level 4. You cannot be signed off if there is any task which is not at level 4. Also, but the expectation is that you're not going to start at level 4, but you progress to be level 4. Now, ICAS, I'm not going to go into it because of our time, but ICAS uses a decision tree, which have trained the assessors on. So when they do their orientation, one of the things that they must take you through is there is a decision tree that gets you to the rating, which you're supposed to do. Remember, I said you do your own self-rating. When you submit your TSR to the reviewer, they also then do their own rating. Sometimes they can agree with you, but sometimes they can also disagree with you. At the end of the 6 months, when the assessor is now looking at all the TSRs you've done or all the PSRs, they also do their own rating in terms of where you are at the end of that particular 6 months. So that is the decision tree. That is a rating scale that is used by ICAS to rate trainees. Right. Just to emphasize, I spoke about these 3 documents: technical skills review, which is used for your technical skills, and then professional skills for your pervasive skills, and then assessment needs analysis at the end of the 6 months, right? Now, this is the frequency that is expected of trainees. In your first 6 months, you must have at least 1 TSR every 2 months, which means in a 6 month period, you must have at least 3 TSRs. Now, a TSR can capture multiple competencies, but you must raise at least 1 every 2 months. More is better, so you can actually have more, but at the minimum, you must have at least 1 every 2 months. So it means every 6 months, you must actually have 3 TSRs. PSR, you must at least complete once every 2 months. You can open one, but you're completing it on every 2 months as you progress, and then it's going to be completed in that manner. But one of the easiest ways is just to complete, just like what we've done on the PSR every 2 months. So that's the expectation. When you get to, let's say you finish your first year, and then you submit your evidence to ICAS and you want to be discharged, the first thing that ICAS is going to check is, do I have enough TSRs, right? So already, if let's say you It's a whole year, so the expectation is at a bare minimum, you must have 6 TSRs, and then they're looking at your file. You only have got 4. Automatically, they can't sign you off because you have not met, you don't have enough TSRs in that regard. Right. So guys, I've tried to summarize this like in 40 or so minutes, which I was given, so I've just gone past the time. But this requires a much longer session where we really do exercises, we demonstrate its principles, we have got a practice exercise, so that because this process is fairly complex, the ICAS training model is fairly complex, so it's important to really take the time to do it. But here it was just having just that appreciation of the overview of how it works. I might have gone a little bit deeper into it. Hopefully that didn't confuse you, but in a nutshell, that is the program. Amasimba, back to you.
Thank you, Ellis, for an insightful presentation. I think like what Ellis said, the ICAS competence framework actually is a comprehensive framework. So we also need to go and revisit it so that you can fully understand it. I think as ICAS, you also reshare the document as well with you soon after this webinar. If we have any questions for Ellis, feel free to post them in the Q&A section. We'll be able to answer them during the Q&A session. Maybe if you feel you don't want to send the question, you actually want to ask, we also allow you to then unmute your mic towards the Q&A section. At this point in time, allow me to introduce you our second speaker, who is Felicity Karekwawenane, ICAS Registrar, who is going to cover trainees' expectations and responsibility throughout the training process. Felicity, over to you. Okay, Precious, I think you can just jot down your question. You will be able to answer. We'll be able to answer you during the Q&A time. Just jot down your question.
Confirm you can see my screen?
Yes, confirmed.
All right. Okay, some of the details that I've got here have already been mentioned in passing by Ellis. So what has been mentioned, I will just pass. So for the ICAS training program, our trainees are supposed to enter into a training contract, and the parties to that training contract are the trainee, the training office, and ICAS. So once the trainee has completed their training contract, they will then submit it online, and it will be approved by the ICAS Education Committee, and then a student number is generated. So only after the generation of that student number can one say that they are in an active training contract. We will share more details on how you can go about registering the training contract with ICAS. And in terms of the duties and responsibility of each of these parties, we have what we call the ICAS training regulations. And as trainees, you should all have a copy of those regulations so that you are aware of what is expected of you, what you can expect from ICAS, and what you should also expect from your training officer. The roles of ICAS in the training process are accreditation and reaccreditation of training offices. So for you to become an ICAS trainee, you need to be in an office that was accredited and meets the ICAS accreditation standards. So we will need to come through to your training offices to see if your offices meet our standard, and if we are happy that as trainees, you are going to have enough exposure to achieve all the competencies that Alice has been taking us through. Then now we can accredit you as a training office. And we also need you to have at least one person who is a member of ICAS, either someone who is a qualified public sector professional accountant, a chartered accountant, or an articled accountant Zimbabwe member. So you should have at least one person who is a member within your training office for that office to be accredited by ICAS. ICAS is also responsible for the registration and discharge of the training contracts. So you cannot say you've got a training contract if that contract has not come through to ICAS. So as a trainee, it is your responsibility to ensure that the training office has done what they're supposed to do. The submission process is online, so you just need to submit online. Then the training officer also approves where they need to approve, and then it is sent to ICAS for registration. And we also register the training officers. So for one to be a training officer, they have to undergo a training program. We call it a training for our registered assessors. So as ICAS, we conduct the assessor training sessions. It's a 2-day workshop where the prospective training officers come and they are trained. And then after the training, there's a portfolio of evidence that they need to complete. It is submitted to ICAS and marked, and if they are competent, then they can be registered as training officers. And training officers should be members of ICAS. Then after we register the training office, we also monitor the training offices through our office visits. This is so that we can ensure that the assessment process is ongoing as per the ICAS training regulations, and to ensure that the trainees are getting enough exposure per our regulations as well, so that at the end of your training contract, you would have achieved all your competencies. ICAS is also there to arbitrate appeals relating to the training program. This is in cases whereby maybe you've done your PSR, your ANA, and you are not in agreement with your training officer in terms of the rating that you gave yourself, where you feel there's some injustice being done to you as a trainee. ICAS can always that is, if your internal processes have failed, ICAS can then come in and try to ensure that there's arbitration so that there is smooth working of the training program. Then there's approval of recognition of prior learning. I think this has already been discussed in detail. So our role as ICAS is to ensure that there is quality and success of the training program. Then the role of the training officer, who's also a party to the training contract, they have to be a registered assessor. Like I've said, they need to ensure that your training contracts are registered with ICAS. They are also liable for payment of fees to ICAS. So when you submit your training contract to ICAS, there is a registration fee that should be paid. It is currently $66. So the training officer needs to ensure that your fees are paid. And then there's an annual subscription that is also paid by all trainees. The training officer also supervises the review of the training records. That is the 6 monthly reviews that we were just being taken through. So they are responsible for ensuring that the reviews have taken place, that they have signed, so that the trainee can move on to the next period. On our online platform, if the sign-offs are not done, then you cannot conclude the following ANA. So there is need to ensure that this process takes place so that the trainee can then open the next ANA. And then they are also responsible to ensure that The online induction has been done by the trainees. So we've got an online induction program, which should be done at the commencement of the training program. This induction program will highlight basically the assessment process, some of the issues that are being covered in this webinar. So you'll be taken through so that you can understand your expectations, what you're supposed to do in terms of ensuring that your assessments are done, how to complete the honors, the PSRs and TSR. So that's part of the induction process. So this is a program we recommend that you take as soon as you have a training contract. And then there's also the CA Leadership Masterclass, which should be done during the duration of the training, which is also key in terms of just building a rounded professional accountant. So again, we recommend that you take this course earlier on, and the training officer should also pay for this, the masterclass as well. Then in terms of entry requirements for a training contract, so for you to get into an ICAS training contract, you would need to be a holder of an accredited or a recognized course that is ICAS will recognize, or if you are a graduate registered for the PSPA program, you can get into a contract, or if you are registered for a degree or a course that is accredited by ICAS. So we would need a written evidence to satisfy the training officer and ICAS that you hold any of these the three that I've mentioned, and you can then get into a training contract. We will also tell you the other requirements that you need to submit at the point of registration of the training contract. Once you get into a training contract, there is a probationary period, which is a maximum of 3 months. And this commences at the date of engagement as a student accountant. For the probationary period, the training officer may not specify a period that is not in accordance with the training regulations. For example, they cannot put a trainee on a probationary period of 6 months or 1 year. So it should be 3 months. And for some contracts, after the expiry of the probationary period, this is only when the trainee then gets into a training contract. And where this happens, then part of your the probation period also forms part of the training contract. Then there are instances whereby the student's accountant already has a contract with like in our case, in your case, most of you are already working for the organizations, so you're already within those training offices. So your probationary period will only commence once you register your contract with ICAS. So that's when we start counting that you are on probation, and it will be for a 3 months period. Then hours of work, we expect all our trainees to be full-time employees. So that means that you should be working for a minimum of 7 hours per day, 5 days a week. And for overtime, this is stipulated in your employment contracts. And our expectation is that our employment contracts, or all the employment contracts, are adhering to the Labour Act of Zimbabwe. So the trainee must fulfill his responsibilities, his duties as set out in the training contract, and failure by the trainee to perform any of the duties in the training contract may constitute a punishable offense. So training offices are also entitled to specify their own criteria for recruitment, as well as the terms and conditions of employment. So that the two contracts are different. You will have your normal contract as an employee, then you will have the ICAS training contract, which should run for, depending on which program you are taking, it can be for 1 year, for 2 years, or for 3 years. Then the trainee is also expected to gain experience in the prescribed technical and professional competencies. This is what was being highlighted to us. So I think I will skip this slide. Then there is also secondment, which is an option for our trainees. So secondment happens when a trainee is transferred on a temporary basis to another training office in Zimbabwe or a branch of the training office outside Zimbabwe, where the trainee will be involved in work that is relevant to their practical training requirements. So during the period of secondment, the training officer will remain responsible for the trainee, So during the training officer remains responsible for the trainee, even when the trainee is not directly reporting to them during the period of secondment. When the student is seconded in an office that is within Zimbabwe, there is no maximum period allowable for that secondment. But if it is outside Zimbabwe, then the limit is at least 180 days. So you cannot then be on secondment for like 2 years, 3 years. In that scenario, it means that you can maybe suspend your training contract if you are going to work for a longer period and then come back to Zim and then finalize your training contract. Then the trainee should also take ownership of their own training. This is by ensuring that the assessments are done on time. So in as much as the training officer has a responsibility to ensure that assessments are being done, at the end of the day, it is the responsibility of the trainee to ensure that their assessments are happening, to nudge their training officers should the training officer not be responsive and they're not signing off. They should also take the initiative where they feel like they need to be exposed to new areas where they can get the required competencies. They should be also guiding the training officer where they feel they need that exposure, so that at the end of their training period, they've enough exposure and they've attained all their competencies. So we always encourage you trainees to ensure that you are owning the process, and in the end, we then don't blame any person should there be a need to extend the contract at the end of the time period. So the trainee should diligently carry out their duties as assigned to them by the training officer, because everything that happens within the training environment is to enable you to become the rounded professional accountant that we want you to be. So upon completion of your hours of articles and completing the examination, you should register as a member of ICAS, and you cannot call yourself a professional, a public sector professional accountant up until you are registered as an institute. So it is actually an offense for one to call themselves a member of ICAS before they've gone through the registration process. And then also when you've completed your exams, we give trainees a 24-month window in which you, by the end of that period, you should have applied for membership. If you've not yet applied for membership, then the trainee will need to undergo the proficiency assessment interview. It is currently, and it's an online assessment where we just need to find out if you are still at the level that we expect for a member before we admit you as a member. So here the encouragement is for you to register as a member as soon as you attain your qualification, as soon as you've been signed off on your contract. And then you are also, okay, I think I've already mentioned this. Yeah, so I think also maybe the masterclass we've covered in the learner management system, that's the induction course. So we also have the ICAS Chartered Accountants Act and the bylaws. So this is the act that regulates all our members. And we've got the Public Accountants and Auditors Act. The Public Accountants is our regulator. So as members of ICAS, you would then also be expected to be registered under the Public Accountants and Auditors Board and to also adhere to their act. As ICAS, we've adopted the IFAC Code of Ethics for Professional Accountants, and we expect all our members and our students to adhere to these regulations. Then we come to finally the disciplinary process. So a training officer or a student can bring to ICAS's notice any circumstances that may constitute improper conduct, whether from the trainee part, if you feel that there is improper conduct by the training officer or from the training office, then this is something that you can bring to them to the attention of ICAS if it relates to the training program, and vice versa. Should the training officer feel that there is improper conduct on the part of the trainee, they can also bring this to ICAS's attention, and we will take this through our education committee so that there is the investigations that are conducted, and if a trainee is found guilty of improper conduct, then it's either there is cancellation of the existing training contract, or there are certain conditions that can be imposed on the contract should any trainee be found to have done a conduct that we do not think is ethical. There can be an extension of the training contract. We can also refuse to recognize previous training records or experience that you'd have covered, or refuse the trainee to register a new contract entirely. So also there is a reprimand or cautioning depending on what the improper conduct will be. So ICAS has in place a disciplinary committee and an investigations committee, whereby should incidences like this occur, then the proper channels are followed. In terms of discharging of the training contract, this is done at the end of your program. So once you have finalized your 1 year and you've completed all your competencies and you've completed the minimum hours per the training regulations, which is 1,200 hours per annum, you can then initiate the discharge of your training contract. When you initiate this, we will then expect you to attach your masterclass certificate, to attach the learner, the induction certificate, and we will also expect the final honor to be attached to this. After this is put through our online portal and sent through to the education committee for approval. After the education committee approves, you will get a notification that will tell you that your contract has been discharged. So this brings to an end my presentation. I will hand back to Masimba.
Thank you, Felicity, for the presentation. And I can see questions are coming. So if you have questions, just post them in the Q&A session. Maybe if you want to ask, we also allow you to raise your hand when we go to the question and answer section, which is more 20 minutes just towards the end of the webinar. At this point in time, allow me to introduce the third speaker to you, who is Bay Nengomasha, ICAS Students Coordinator, who is going to cover on how to register a training contract. And I know to some of you not yet attached to a training office, you have questions like, for now, can I register a training contract if I don't have a training office? And also, how can I go about it? So Beinongo Masha is going to cover that. Over to you, Bay.
Okay, thank you very much, Masimba. Please confirm that I'm audible. And also, please,
Yes.
if you can confirm that you can see my screen.
Yes, confirmed, loud and clear.
All right, that's fine. Thank you very much. Good morning to everyone who has joined us today for this wonderful webinar. So my duty is just to take you through the registration process for your ICAS training contract. So basically, like my speakers who spoke before me highlighted that you need to have an ICAS training contract that will be signed between your employer, yourself, and ICAS. So we call it a tripartite contract. So the process is that you need to go to the ICAS website, and I will take you through the process so that you also familiarize yourself with how you actually do it when you visit the ICAS website. But just for your information on my slide, I just have a few slides, and I think some of the information had already been mentioned by speakers before me. The training offices that are accredited under the public sector program with us, at the moment, we currently have 6 of them. Namely, I think on my second bullet, as you can see, there is the Office of the Auditor General, there is ZIMRA, we have Judicial Service Commission, we have Bulawayo City Council, we have the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, and lastly, we have the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development, MOFED. So these are the 6 training offices that are currently accredited with us. So some of you will then ask what do we then do if we are in the program, but our training or our organization, it could be an SOE, it could be a ministry, it could be a council, and is not yet accredited with ICAS. So we had meetings with PSC and some of our stakeholders, and through Ministry of Finance, I can confirm that all of us are able to initially register our ICAS training contracts under any of these 6 that you might be familiar with, or which would be your preferred or desired training office for now, whilst we continue with registering your own current employer so that they are also registered as an ICAS accredited training office for the public sector professional program. So I think that answers some of the questions that you had with regards to the training office accreditation. So I think lastly, I would then just mention how the process for accrediting a training office should be done. But in the meantime, allow me to take you through the process on how you actually visit the website and you register your training contract. And I think in the chat, we'll then share with you the templates for the ICAS training contract, and also for those who would want to do recognition of prior learning, like Mr. Mkunyadze mentioned earlier on, who also share in the chat with the RPO form. So basically, these are the steps that you need to take to register your training contract. Step number 1 is for you to visit ICAS website, and then you just type www.icas.org.zw, and then after you've done that, you go to the ICAS website, and then you access the registration portal. So I think for better clarity on the process, if you can just allow me to then do the process whilst all of us are on the call. So you just go to your browser and then you click ICA's website. Then when you go there, sorry, it's loading. Okay, so this is the homepage that you go when you visit the ICA's website. And then where we want to go is where it says join now, because we are entirely new on this program and we want to register ourselves as ICA's students on the ICA's website. So to my extreme right, below the sign in tab, highlighted in blue, there is an option extreme right where it says join now. That's where we go, just to click there.
So sorry, Bay.
Yes.
Cannot. I think your screen is a bit blur. We can't
Or is it?
see. Yeah, from this end, I'm not seeing. Maybe you
No.
can try to reload.
Okay, let me try to.
Yeah,
Thank you, Masimba, for
yeah.
that. Let me try to reload again.
It's now fine.
Oh, it's now fine.
Yeah.
All right, that's fine. So I say that you just click on join now, and then it will take you to the join page, landing page. And then there we scroll downwards. There are various options for various students who are pursuing their qualifications with ICAS. So where we want to go is where it says PSPA join now. That we want to it is what the program that we are doing currently. So when we click there, it will take you to a landing page where you're supposed to then fill in your personal details. And now we can safely say we have started the registration process to be registered as a public sector professional accountant associate. So I'll just quickly fill in my details here. Okay, so because I'm creating a new account, it will ask me for a password. So I'll try and put in a password. Okay, and then we just click next. All right. Apologies for that. I think my account had been picked up as an already existing account, so I quickly had to use my personal email address because it had picked my work email. All right, that's fine. So once you have put in your details, it will take you to the next tab, where you just also supposed to fill in, now we want your KYC documents. So you put in your ID, and then here you're just clicking public sector accounting technician as your study program. The nationality, obviously Zimbabwean. Okay, so everywhere where there is a red star, it means that it's a strictly required information. You can't proceed to the next step without putting in some information on those options. So make sure that you put in all the information where there is a red star. And now it wants the proof. So ID proof, obviously you have to upload something. There is a national ID. And then your qualifications, if you have an A-level certificate, you just also upload there. So for the purpose of the demonstration, I'm just uploading any document, but we actually then review each and every document when we are now doing background checks for this process. So please ensure that you're uploading the correct documents for you to be successfully registered. Okay, then if you have a degree, you can just also then upload. If you don't have, it's okay. If you have a diploma, if you have any other qualification that you have, you then just upload that under the degree option, so that we also know the other qualifications that you have. Then res. Yes. Then after completing everything, you then go on to click next. So it will take you to the last, second from last tab, where now we are asking you to upload your training contract, your ICAS training contract. So like we said, this is the contract that you would have signed between yourself, ICAS, and your employer as a student trainee under the public sector. So there is a +2 function. You just click there, and then there's a pop-out that will show, and then it will ask you to select your training office. So for the purposes, there is a list of all the ICAS accredited training offices. These include those who are pursuing the Chartered Accountant qualification, those who are pursuing the public sector professional accountants profession. So you have to navigate through the list and look for your training office. So for the purpose of this demonstration, I would like to pick one of the 6 that I had mentioned. So it's either we will use Judicial Service Commission. I say there it is. So if I want to use JSC, I can just click Judicial Service Commission. If I want to use Moffat, Ministry of Finance, let me try to look for it. There it is. So there is Ministry of Finance and Economic Development, and then I just click there. And then entry training qualification. You're just then telling us your entry level. If you have a degree, you click under BCom. If you're coming from A level, you just click A level. If you have any other qualification, it could be ACA, it could be CIS, you then just also click there. All the options are there. And then the next thing to be completed would be for you to upload your duly signed ICAS training contract. Please note that we need your training contract to be signed by the training officer for the accredited training office that you would have selected. So you just say select, and then it will ask you to upload from your computer or your laptop or any device that you'll be using. Then you upload. Then it will also ask you for the proof of payment because there's a registration fee that is required to register your training contract. The fee is 66 US dollars for those who would want to know, and it's actually payable in ZIG or in our local currency using the prevailing rate. And then you just also upload the POP once you have made the payment. Right, so I think we are done for this section, and then we just save and close. All right, so now that I've saved and closed, it has already created a reference number for me. If you can check my mouse or my trackpad, let me try to highlight here where it says IMS ID 267658. That's my reference number. So if I have issues with my account, I have to make reference to that number when I'm reaching out to ICAS team to say, I tried to create an account, so, but I haven't received any feedback. You just tell us this code and then we are able to track. So, and then for the information that I then put when we were uploading, as you can see, it is picked that I'm training under Ministry of Finance and Economic Development. My entry qualification is A level, and then I've uploaded my duly signed contract. I've also uploaded my proof of payment. So everything on this tab is now fine, and we should be able to proceed to the next, which is the final tab. So I just click next. All right, then the last tab is just a tab where it then notifies you of the annual subscription fees that you'll be required to pay. But this payment is not needed when you register your training contract. So you can actually bypass this process, and these fees should actually be paid by your employer. We don't expect any trainee to pay from their own pocket, as there is an arrangement between ICAS and the accredited training office for these payments to be done. So it's a matter of raising an invoice and then giving it to your employer so that they pay for you for these annual subscriptions. Please note that this payment is not needed when you are processing your training contract registration. I hope I've answered you there, and I've clarified on that one. So you just then have to click finish. Okay. So this marks the end of the registration process. And then, sorry, I'm seeing it saying there are no items on this card. Okay. Well, that's fine. All right. Proceed to check out. Okay, so you need to click on the add to cart option, and then when you click there, it will prompt you to make a payment. But like I said, we don't need to make the payment when you are registering, and it is only your employer who has to pay for the 132 annual subscription fees. So you scroll down and you click on the option to pay later, so that it doesn't prompt you to make the payment as you are registering. Then under PO number, you just put the date when you are registering your training contract so today is 30 April 2025. And then once you are done, you then click submit order. All right. So it will give you an order confirmation. This then tells you that you have successfully registered your training contract for your public sector practical training. So it will just give you a background of the information that you had completed, and then it then notifies you that a confirmation is being sent to the particular email that you would have registered with, which I have highlighted here. So if I'm to go to my Gmail inbox, I will see a notification which says that please note that your training contract has been received by ICAS. So that marks the end of the registration process. I don't know if if there's anyone with a question or comments, but I think as Masimba had highlighted, if you have questions to do with the registration process, please note them down, and then when we have the question and answer session, we can always help each other on how to navigate the registration process. So back to my slides, I think much of the information we did when we were doing the actual process of registering training contract on the ICAS website. And just to note, after you have registered, in terms of the timelines, there's actually a board which will then have to sit and approve all these registrations. We call it the ICAS Education Committee, and they sit on a monthly basis. So it might happen that but the committee will sit towards the end of May. So you need to allow us that time for the committee to sit and review all the applications. And once the meeting is then held and your training contract registration has been approved by the education committee, we'll go back into the system and we approve your training contract registrations, and you also receive notifications to say that you have successfully been registered as a public sector trainee, and you are now in the ICAS database and ready to go on with your practical training requirements. So in a nutshell, that's the registration process that I've just shown you. Then in terms of the process of accrediting your various organizations as ICAS registered training offices, the requirements are as follows. We will need at least one person who is a member of ICAS to be employed with your organization. So when we say a member, we mean someone who is registered either as a chartered accountant of Zimbabwe, as an articled accountant Zimbabwe, or as a public sector professional accountant member of the institute. As long as they are a member of ICAS, then you tick the box in terms of having a member. Then there are some accreditation application documents that we will then forward to you for your completion. And once you have completed them, we will then require you to then send to the email on this slide, which is my email address. You can also just copy registry@icas.org.zw when you send back those forms once you have completed them. Then the last requirement for accrediting your organization as a training office would be the accreditation application fee, which is currently it's 500 US dollars, which is also payable using our local currency ZIG, using the prevailing rate of the day. So basically, that's the process. Once we receive those accreditation documents, we'll then set up a meeting between ICAS and your organization so that we discuss the papers and we tell you our expectations. Once that has been done, the papers or your application to be accredited as a training office will then be forwarded again to the education committee as they have the mandate to review and approve all the accreditation applications. And then in terms of timelines, I would say it will take us at most 1 month from the date we receive those documents for your organization to be accredited as a registered training office of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Zimbabwe. So basically, that's what I wanted to present on. I will hand back over to Masimba. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much, Bay, for the presentation in terms of the ICAS registration process, as well as how to accredit a training office. I think we will also share the recording. So maybe if you miss something as part of Bay's illustration, you can as well go back and just see in terms of how to register a training contract. So at this point in time, I think we just have about 10 minutes for question and answers. So I think we'll start with if you have a question, raise your hand and I can unmute, and also can also name or direct the question either if it's in relation to the competence framework and direct to Alice, if it deals with registering a training contract direct to Bay, if it's in relation to trainees' responsibilities, you can direct it to Felicity. So if you have any question, feel free to raise your hand and I can unmute you. Tatenda Msonza, you can unmute yourself and ask your question. Tatenda Msonza. Okay, Charity, you can unmute yourself and ask your question. Charity. Okay, I also waiting for Charity Tatenda. Robert, you can unmute your mic and ask your question.
Oh, good morning. Thank you. I wanted to ask if there are any templates or guidelines that help us to know how these training contracts are drafted. I submit.
All right, thank you. You can assist on that.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Oromani, for your question. Yes, I can confirm that we actually have a template of an ICAS training contract. So please note that the ICAS training contract is a separate contract from your original contract of employment with your current employer. So I think for the benefit of everyone who is on the call today, I will share the template just now on the chat, so that everyone can access it. And then if there are questions to do with that, whilst we are still here, we can always respond to you. I hope I've answered you, Mr. Oroman.
Perfectly, thank you.
Oh, all right, thank you. I think whilst you're waiting for other questions, I'll go to the Q&A section. There are a bit of questions. So I'll start with the one from I think Kudakwashe said, if you heard about the annual subscription, what of the $66 who is supposed to pay the employer? I think on this one, Bay, can you assist who is responsible for paying the $66, which is the student registration fees?
Right. Thank you, Masimba. Like I said earlier on when I was presenting, when we accredited this training office, we actually then notify them that any fees that would need to be paid to do with the practical training of the students is supposed to be paid by the employer. So all the training offices that I mentioned there are aware of this, and they are required to pay. It's not on the trainees' budget that they should pay, but rather on the employer.
All right, thank you, Be. Then there is a question from Obit saying those in level 3, are they starting practical training from technician level 1? I think I can direct this question to Ellis.
Thank you very much. Those that are in level 3, yes, you need to get a sign off on all the competences, which include level 1 and level 2. One way is obviously you can start by doing your recognition of prior learning, which already then says I've already covered this, and then you then focus on the remaining competences. But for ICAS to discharge you on level 3, you must be signed off on all of them, which includes level 1, level 2, and level 3.
Thank you, Ellis. I think just a request from Chikondoa saying in terms of presentation. So I think soon after this webinar, we'll be able to share the recording as well as the presentations. Then there is a question from Maurice again, is saying who selects the training office, student or allocated by ICAS? So I think I will just try and answer this question. So in terms of the training office, so if you are not working at either the 6 which were mentioned by Bay, currently we had an agreement with PSC to make MOFED is your training office for all those students who are yet to be attached to an accredited training office. So in this case, we are saying if you're not attached to the 6 that were mentioned by Bay, as of now, you are making MOFED as a training office, whilst you are facilitating for your entity to be accredited. Then there's another question from Morris again saying who is responsible for making the reviewer aware of his or her responsibility in this ICAS program. I will direct this question to Ellis.
So essentially, it's the training office. One of the things that ICAS looks at on accreditation is that they already have got a process which identifies and equips who the reviewers are going to be. So a training program needs to be done for the trainees as well as for the reviewers. ICAS handles the training program for the assessors. So it's the responsibility of the training office to make sure that all reviewers are adequately equipped.
Thank you, Ellis. Then I think Maurice was also requesting if resources permits a physical workshop where all IPSA students converge once a year with some. So I think as part of this webinar, I was also there, as part of my conclusion, I also want to share with you that we'll be having also a series of trainings and webinars where we will then train the reviewers, the evaluators, the assessors, etc. So we'll be sharing in terms of the dates and as well as costs associated if there are trainings that are associated that have a cost associated with them. So on that one, don't worry, we've got you on that one. Then there's a question which was from HIM, which was saying now that the framework is coming to us late at level 3, how do we get assisted? I think I'll just direct the question to Ellis, but I know he once covered some of the issues as part of his presentation.
Sorry, I missed that. You're saying how is what?
The question is saying now that the framework is coming to us late at level 3, how do we get assisted?
Well, we are more than happy to assist. Elchat, we work with ICAS on this, so we are more than happy to assist, and we can deal with it on a case-by-case basis. And I'm also sure ICAS would be more than happy to assist. But I think more importantly, it's really making sure that you've got the training contract first, and then you know who your assessor is going to be, because it's not something that you can do on your own. It has to be training office initiated. And I think also Masimba spoke about the upcoming trainings. I think it will help in that regard.
All right, thank you, Elise. Then I think there's issue now going to the chat section. There is a question saying one speaker said trainees will be allocated training office and another said trainees can choose office they want. What is the actual position? I think on this one I answered, if you are not yet in an accredited training office, which is the 6 that were mentioned by Bay, as of now you'll be using Moffat as your training office, whilst we are assisting you or we are making your entity being an accredited training office. Then there is a question which says from John Mkesi, if one enters into a contract with, say, Zimra, and they are employed at Harare municipality, what happens to their employment contract? So I think on this one, it's always important to note, like what also Bay said, your training or student contracts are actually not attached to employment contract. They are separate contracts. And also as an emphasis, if you are working with Harare City, you cannot make Zimra your training office, but as of now, you're making Moffat, whilst you are making sure that your entity is accredited as a training office. Then I think those were the questions in the, let me just see if there are other question. Okay. Then other question they were saying some of our ministry are not registered as training office. How should we get training office? So I think on this one I answered. Then there is when I choose the training office, should I communicate with it first before registering my training contract? So I think on this one, if you are not attached to the 6, automatically if you say Moffat, we then realize, we then know, because we already know the trainees who are working at Moffat. So we then know that you are not yet attached to accredited training. Then we then try and assist you to make sure that your entity is accredited. Then there is a question from Jacob. For trainees who are now in level 3, is it possible to allocate some of the 1,002 are required to private learning, so that there may be less pressure on us, given the fact that we also need to have adequate time to prepare for our final exams, which are due in December. So from your RPL, we also need to note that the maximum years or that are awarded to RPO is 1 year, which is 12 months, which is equivalent to 2 anners. From early presentation, 6 months. 1 anna is also equivalent to 6 months. So for your RPO, you can only get a maximum of 1 year. So it's also important to note that you cannot get an RPO which is equivalent for the 3 years. Maximum is 1 year. Then from Kelvin, what is the process involved in accreditation? Do we choose our own preference, and how do we do this approach to this organization? So the issue, I think, from base presentation, what is key from accreditation, I think, is key for as part of the requirements besides the $500. It's also key that you should have an assessor, ICAS assessor, as part of your entity, as part of the requirements of making sure that your entity is accredited. So if you don't have an assessor, it will then become difficult for your entity to be accredited, besides the fees that are required. Then from Mangue, when should the registration be done? So I think from Tonderai's introduction, I think you're already late in terms of registering the training contracts. So I can say as soon as possible. Then from Kudakwa Shikanjere, you've heard about the normal annual. I think this one I answered this one. I think those were the questions. As of now, those are the questions. I don't know if the other way of banning questions. You can raise your hand, and then I can unmute you if there are other way of banning questions. Okay, I think it appears as of now we are good. Just a few reminders. Currently, registration for those who are sitting for the June exams, registration is currently ongoing and it will be closing on the 16th of May. So let's make sure that we register on time. Then also just an update is ICAS will be having a public sector convention on the 4th and 5th of September at Holiday Inn Bulawayo, and registration is started. So just visit ICA's website, the Facebook, your Twitter, your LinkedIn for all communication from ICAS in terms of webinars as well as events. But otherwise, I would like to thank you all for taking time from your busy schedules to come and join this important webinar. And I do hope that you also be receiving some registration for the student registration contracts. Otherwise, have a good day. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.